They had the money, they had the houses, they had the applause, and then nothing. Behind the gold records and sold-out shows were lives slowly collapsing. Contracts expired, minds fractured, friends disappeared. What remained wasn't fame, but survival. This is not a story about excess. It's a story about what happens after the dream dies. Sly Stone from the center of the world to a van on the street at the peak of the late 1960s. Sly Stone wasn't just successful, he was unstoppable. Sly and the family Stone stood at the center of American culture, blending rock, funk, soul, race, and rebellion into something that felt inevitable. Woodstock #1 records millions in revenue, mansions, luxury cars, total freedom. Sly was not chasing the future, he was the future. Then it all collapsed. Drug addiction didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in quietly, disguising itself as control. Cocaine became routine. Paranoia replaced creativity. Trust dissolved. Shows were missed. Contracts were violated. Lawsuits followed. The same industry that once treated him as untouchable began isolating him completely. By the late 1970s, the money was gone. What followed was not a dramatic headline downfall, but something far darker: disappearance. Sly Stone drifted in and out of obscurity, avoiding people, avoiding systems, avoiding responsibility. Royalty disputes drained what little income remained. Former bandmates moved on. The world kept spinning without him. By the 2000s, the unthinkable became reality. Sly Stone, once one of the richest and most influential musicians in America, was living in a camper van on the streets of Los Angeles. No mansion, no security, no protection. Just a parking space, a blanket, and fading memories of a life that once ruled the airwaves. Syd Barrett, the star who vanished. Syd Barrett was the face of psychedelic London. Pink Floyd's early sound, image, and myth were built around him. Fame arrived fast and broke him just as quickly. Heavy LSD use, untreated mental illness, and pressure pushed Syd out of reality. He didn't fall publicly. He simply disappeared. After leaving Pink Floyd, the money stopped. Syd returned to Cambridge, living reclusively, dependent on family support. He avoided people, avoided the past, and erased his own legacy. There were no mansions, no tours, only quiet rooms and long silences. Syd wasn't homeless in the traditional sense, but he became invisible. A man once shaping the future of rock ended up existing outside it entirely. His story proves that losing everything doesn't always mean the streets. Sometimes it means vanishing from the world altogether. Peter Green, the guitar god, who walked away. Green was one of the greatest guitarists of the late 1960s. Fleetwood Mac's early success made him rich, respected, and unstoppable. Then everything collapsed. Heavy LSD use, schizophrenia, and spiritual obsession pulled him away from fame. Green gave away money, rejected success, and vanished from the industry almost overnight. For years, he lived with no real income, drifting between relatives, hospitals, and obscurity. The man who once outsold Clapton walked the streets unnoticed. He wasn't chasing fame, he was escaping it. His homelessness was emotional, spiritual, and financial all at once. Peter Green didn't fall because of excess greed. He fell because his mind could no longer survive the noise of success. His silence became louder than any solo he ever played. Brian Wilson, trapped inside luxury. Brian Wilson earned millions and lived in California. Mansions, but his collapse happened behind closed doors. Severe mental illness, paranoia, and drug abuse left him isolated. While money still existed, control did not. Others decided where he lived, who he saw, and how he survived. For years, Brian barely functioned. He was technically wealthy, but psychologically homeless. Cut off from normal life, he lived inside rooms designed to protect him, not free him. Fame didn't save him, it imprisoned him. Brian Wilson's story proves homelessness isn't always visible. Sometimes it wears silk curtains and ocean views, while the mind lives nowhere at all. Erickson, psychedelia. To the streets. Roky Erickson helped invent psychedelic rock. Fame came fast, but stability never followed. Mental illness and substance abuse pushed him out of the music world and into institutions. Hospitals replaced stages. Contracts vanished. Money evaporated. After release, Roky had nowhere solid to go. He drifted between relatives, cheap rooms, and the edges of society. At times, he lived with no income, no support, and no real protection. The man who changed American rock became invisible. Roky Erickson didn't lose everything in one explosion. He faded. His homelessness was quiet, medical, and cruel. Innovation gave him legacy, but no safety. Johnny Thunders hotels to squats Johnny Thunders lived fast and burned everything. New York Doll's success paid for hotels, drugs, and chaos, but never stability. Addiction destroyed his income. Bands collapsed. Promoters stopped calling. By the late 1970s, Thunders was drifting between squats, cheap European rooms, and friends' couches. Sometimes he had nowhere at all. His image remained dangerous, but his reality was desperate. Johnny didn't fall from a mansion to the street overnight. He slid step by step until nothing was left. Punk made him immortal. Addiction made him homeless. Tommy Bolin, money without ground. Tommy Bolin rose fast. Deep Purple, solo success. Major tour's real money arrived almost overnight, but the income came without protection. Addiction drained everything. Management collapsed. Friends disappeared. Despite his fame, Bolin lived without stability. Cash flowed in and out instantly. Hotels replaced homes. By the end, he was functionally broke. Drifting between temporary spaces with no safety net, Tommy Bolin didn't have time to become homeless. Death came first. But financially and structurally, he was already there. Success without control is just collapse on delay. Arthur Lee, forgotten in plain sight. Arthur Lee was the mind behind Love and the classic album Forever Changes. In the 1960s, he stood at the center of the Los Angeles scene. But royalties were weak. Legal trouble followed. Momentum died. By the 1980s, Lee was living in poverty. At times, he was homeless, sleeping where he could, surviving on fan help. The industry moved on. The checks stopped. Arthur Lee wasn't reckless. He was abandoned. His fall wasn't lauded, was neglect. One of America's great songwriters faded into obscurity while his music grew in value. Skip Spence. Talent left outside Skip Spence helped define the San Francisco sound. Moby Grape signed one of the biggest contracts of the era. Money arrived early, but structure never did. Mental illness, addiction, and paranoia destroyed his ability to function in the industry. The label walked away. Friends faded out. Spence drifted through shelters, couches, and temporary spaces, often homeless and untreated when he recorded his final album, or it was done in isolation, almost as a ghost. Skip Spence didn't fall from fame. He was left behind while the machine moved forward without him. Tim Buckley's success without security. Tim Buckley was respected, admired, and critically praised, but never financially secure. Touring paid little. Contracts were weak. Experimentation scared labels. He moved constantly. Apartments came and went. Money never stayed long enough to become stability. While not visibly homeless, Buckley lived on the edge of collapse for most of his career. His death froze that instability forever. Tim Buckley's story isn't about losing mansions. It's about never being allowed to build one. Fame surrounded him, but security never arrived. Fame promises everything. But when the lights shut off, nothing is guaranteed. These were not failures. They were consumed. The music lived forever. They did not. When the industry moves on, only silence remains, and some legends are left with nowhere to go.